Well, hello, and nice 5-inch quad today. It's a FuriBee X215 Pro. The last few FuriBees have been a little bit hit and miss. They used to be a very good quality. Some of them have been a bit ropey, to be honest with you. This one, from the looks of it, looks quite nicely thought out, I have to say. Here we've got it in profile. We've got this lovely aluminium, really tough surface there, and a slightly weird. It feels like this is a bit of a different thing rather than sort of a normal cover. These looks like they've shrink wrapped these motor cables in. 2206 2600 kV motors, pretty powerful things. An XM Plus receiver, which is nice. Camera wise, it's a 2.5mm lens. Looks very much GoPro style there. Well, according to the website, it's a CCD camera. On the stack here, ESC boards 30A BL Heli S, so that should be running D-Shot. We've got an F4 flight controller with inbuilt OSD, and we've got a VTX. Not sure what model that is, but it's apparently you can switch between like 25 up to 300 milliwatts. We'll see how that is. They've been a bit. Some of them have been a bit ropey and not putting out as much as they should do. Hopefully this is better. This is, I think, 4mm carbon. It says it's been imported from England. They should have just cut out the middleman and sent it straight to me. That would have been easier. Anyway, the other stuff in the box, we've got this little pagoda antenna that's going to pop on there. We've got what looks like some sort of session type holder to go, maybe something like that. I'll have to figure that out. And we get 3 sets of props, which are 50/48s. Yeah, so let's get it hooked up, set up, and we'll see how it flies. It certainly looks the business. It reminds me very much of the Jet RC Sparrow with the sort of curved frame there. It should hopefully, I mean it's quite close, but it should protect the camera and components in any sort of upside down smash. But we should check it out. Join me.
Well, I thought I'd just give a quick tour of what was already set up. It's running Betaflight 322, and it uses a Kakute flight controller target. I haven't actually looked to see if that's the original board or not, but that's the target. And it seems set up. We've got the S-Bus set up for the XM Plus, which is good. D-Shot 600. I'll be turning motor stop on. 8K 4K loop, and a bunch of bits and pieces turned on there. As far as the PID tuning goes, it was on profile 2, and there's slight differences between profile 1, 2 and 3, so I'll try those out and see how they feel, I guess. I did note in the receiver it had the RSSI channel disabled. This is a little bit disappointing when they bundle in an XM Plus and they didn't even flash it with the RSSI firmware, and it's too much hassle to desolder, flash and put back on again. Bit of an oversight, weird thing, I don't know why. The modes is really strange. They've put loads on to start with, so they've got angle and horizon. They've got no arm, so it's done with a stick. Beeper, LED low, I haven't even seen that one. I presume it dims the LEDs or turns them off. Black box start, and that's it. Weird set, I'll be changing those. And of course the OSD is the completely weirdness with bits and pieces all over the shop, so we'll be getting rid of most of that and making that a lot more simple. Alright, let's set that up and get it ready. Hello, we're at the field. We've got the X215. Well, I'll spare you the rest of that where I'm trying to talk over the wind, because essentially I was saying, my god, it's really windy today and it's really cold. So I'm in the smaller field than normal today for trying the 5-inch quad, but I'm trying to get a little shelter I could there. So normal routine really. I did a quick line of sight, just a bit of a hover really, and just get a feel for how it did feel. And straight out of the box, I felt it was pretty smooth and it really had some power there. It didn't take much of a touch of the throttle to see this thing rise up pretty quickly. I mean, obviously it's not carrying an HD camera, but it just felt like it had a lot there. That was just a little tiny punch before I thought, oh, that's going up high. I'll stop that. Okay, so here we go on the maiden FPV flight, and I should explain that the weather is cold enough that my thumbs lose the feeling as I'm flying around here. They really don't last more than a couple of minutes, so in between each battery I've got thermal gloves on in my pockets, jumping up and down, trying to keep warm. So if some of this flying looks a bit rough, or I should say rougher than normal, blame my thumbs rather than the craft itself, because as I was flying this, I was thinking, wow, this is working really nicely out of the box. It just feels really smooth and really easy to fly. The other thing I had to note was these motors. They seem to be really quite efficient at, if you're just sort of pootling along like this. I mean, it's not too sluggish, it looks alright, but this sort of speed seems to really suit it well. This will sort of chug along for sort of 5 or 6 minutes quite happily at this sort of rate. But because they are big motors and with a high kV, as soon as you do a maneuver where you full throttle, you will see that battery drain very quickly. So I suppose that's a pretty good mix, really. You've got the stuff, you've got the power and availability there if you need it, and if you don't, you can just fly around quite happily without really draining it fast. I kind of like that. Picture wise, I'm thinking this is pretty good. The camera's showing up quite nicely. It's not ideal conditions. The sun's pretty low, so it's doing okay. There's maybe a touch of noise on this picture, but I think it's pretty good. The VTX is running at 25 milliwatts, and again, that seems to be doing fine here. It's not a big distance. We're only sort of 180 meters away, I think, the furthest point here, but I've got no complaints. Pitch wise, I'm a little bit out of time because they're slightly different to what I use. I would normally use a 0.8. This is a 0.75. So the roll timing for me is a little bit different. But again, I'm impressed with how it's flying out of the box. I didn't feel a need to go in and start messing around with it. What I'm doing here, I'm just checking that my camera angle will allow me to come in and do sort of slow maneuvers as well as flying fast. This is because it's a 2.5mm lens. I often like flying with a much wider angle that will give me the ability to see where I'm landing and the ability to go fast at the same time. So this really needs pointing up a bit because we've got a little bit to go. So you can see if I start trying to get a bit more speed up and I'm looking at a bunch of grass. You can probably see here that the field is still very much what you might call more of a swamp than a field. So I'm always very keen not to do anything but land it in the place where I want and not put it into the ground because it will bury itself and clog up those lovely motors. But happily enough, everything just went fine. There were no problems with video or control here. It just worked as it should have done. Exactly what I'm after when I'm flying something for the first time. So you can see I'm coming in here with 6 minutes on the clock. Obviously I had nearly a minute of hovering time doing line of sight, but you know, there's battery here to spare, and just pootling around like this really allows you to have quite a nice flight. So on this second LiPo, I've tilted the camera up a little bit, but you can see that this causes a problem in itself, and I'll show what happens here. You will notice where the motors are now. If you can look at the screen and the corners and observe the motors, exactly how far they come up, and then when I do a big punch out, have a look at what happens. So if you saw there, the motors seem to lift up, and of course what happened as we punched out, the camera under a little bit of load from a bit of a G-force angled itself down again. Now this is me, despite having tightened up the camera as much as I could, it still remained quite loose, which is a bit of a problem that needs fixing. Now I would have really liked to have flown some more batteries. I flew 3 of them and that was it. My thumbs were done. They were no longer recovering, so I had to hold it there. And on the basis I'll be back to fly it, put a GoPro on and do a bit more stuff like fixing the camera really so it won't move every time I do a punch out. But really, aside from freezing to death, these are the maidens I really enjoy. Finding something that just flies really nicely out of the box and you don't really have to mess around with is the way I want all maidens to be.
I've got to say, despite the weather, this actually worked really well. I love a maiden which just doesn't require anything. It's something that just flies out the box and flies very well as nicely. This thing flew very nicely. I was impressed by just how smooth it was, and the fact that these motors, I think they're so big, at quite a sort of moderate rate, you'd actually get quite a lot out of them. Just sort of pootling along, of which you can still go fairly fast and have a good old fly. You get about 5 minutes. You then put the power on and you see the battery drain really quickly though. But anyway, so I really like this. So I've had to go to real nitpicks to try and find things that I didn't like about it. And there's only a couple really. Firstly, FreeSky XM Plus, love the receiver. Haven't given me much hassles apart from 2 recently I've just got that seemed wrong. But if you're going to put an XM Plus in there and go to the hassle of, wiring in, then for God's sakes, why not flash the RSSI version of the software and have that in the OSD? It just adds a little bit more that you can see and get a bit more information from it. That would have been nice. I really don't like these prop nuts. Because these props kind of come up, and the props are okay, you can't put sort of a regular thing in there to get them. You have to use a different sort of tool, and then these black ones are slightly different from the silver ones in that the bit you've got to grab with your whatever is smaller, so they're a bit annoying. This had a metal buckle on the battery strap, which was weird. It worked fine because I actually forgot to put my normal Velcro under there, and this held it on really tightly. So this camera, very good. I thought it had an excellent image, not a problem at all. It's got a little button to go into the OSD menu and change things if you want to. Lens is 2.5mm. Ideally I would have liked something wider. That's just for me. 2.3 or 2.1 even. Now the only problem I had on this, and you might have noticed, occasionally I'd be going along, you'd see the props at the bottom of the screen and then the props lifted up. This is a little bit loose. If you look there, it's going to focus. I can move this really easy, and I have screwed in as tight as possible there, and there's still some movement. So what we're going to need to do is put some sort of rubber washer in, something just to stop it moving, or some sort of stopper here. It's often the problem I find with these, this is a plastic case or what. Sometimes you find these sort of plastic cases and you practically have to self-tap the screw in there, and so you can only get it tight once. After that point it's not. So yeah, I'll do some work on there. But what I really liked is, despite my thumbs freezing and not having the control I wanted, this flew around absolutely brilliantly. It was just so smooth out the box, which I really did like. There are little wobbles and stuff there, but it was a really windy day, I have to say. So next time I want to go out there and put the GoPro on it. I kind of thought about doing it today, but it was just so cold. I had another look at the GoPro holder they gave, this little case, and essentially it doesn't do anything, it just holds it in there and you put it on and put your battery strap over, which is all nice, but I think I might just carry on with my normal silicone cases, just so it's a bit easier to get a sort of a tether on there and on board. Didn't get a battery strap to do that, but it's not a biggie. Out the box, PIDs were pretty good. I thought this flew nicely. Wasn't too sluggish on the rolls, despite not having my normal 0.80 on the Super 8s. It had 0.75, I think. Beeper was also very loud. Not that it went down, I had to test it, but I could just tell that was loud. And we were running on 25 milliwatts all around there. Not very far, obviously, but again, still a fairly noise-free picture. This little pagoda did okay. So yeah, so far, very impressed with this. Out the box, flying very nicely, just bind it and go. I'll be back to fly this again. I'm just popping on holiday a few weeks, and then I will be flying some more, and I'll be getting the GoPro on board just to see how smooth we can get it, and of course just sorting out this camera and getting the right up angle to get the right combination of speed, power and battery usage. So I have to thank Gearbest for sending this over to review, and this is of course the FuriBee X215 Pro, and there will be a linky down below as per normal where you can check it out. So join me then. I will catch you later in the next video. Bye for now.